pull this out.
Winter, spring, summer, fall, seasons change, we still keep it together.
Hey Beverly Hills 90210 fans, are you ready to dive deep, episode by episode, storyline by storyline, character by character, as we break down the making of your favorite zip code, with your hosts, Charles Rosen.
Did I say that?
Harry
This
Mullins.
heinous thing about the real person, and we're going, what? We're getting rid of this guy.
Pete Ferrero.
I'm feeling wonderful. Kathleen looks TV crush-worthy.
Like so many special guests. And all your questions. Live on the Beverly Hills 90210 show. Oh, yeah. Everybody dance now.
Okay, here we are on the Beverly Hills 90210 show.
No headphones. I have no headphones.
It's a 2-for-1-er.
In one shot,
Oh,
Charles.
Pete, where are you, babe?
I'm in New York. I'm back here filming more of that documentary on Broadway Understudies, which is super exciting.
What shows are you relating to?
Right now, we're really focusing in on that Moulin Rouge show, and the understudy, Ashley Lauren, who I've known for a long time, is the lead of the show now. So this is an incredible story of how that can happen to some people.
Anyway, what's going on?
Okay, so now listen. So here's the thing.
I'll go.
What's very exciting is, well, this week, the episode that we're going to show is something from season 8, so it has nothing to do with you guys whatsoever. But we did want to come on and announce our Super Deluxe Christmas Party 3 is coming on December 21st. It's going to be a live show, but we have something really exciting that everybody can get involved in. We are going to be reading an episode of Beverly Hills 90210, and everybody's going to have parts. Chuck, what is the episode?
It's just an episode, Pete. It's a totally happening life.
It's a totally happening life. Yep. I was setting you up. Go ahead. Yeah.
Chuck should get into this, but it certainly is a notorious and also wonderful episode.
And it's a Christmas episode.
Absolutely.
And Karen and I wrote it, and we were desperate, so we went to Talking Angels, and we're going to play the Talking Angels.
That's right.
And Larry's going to set us up, and I believe
I'm
you're
going to read the stage direction. I'm looking at the cast list now. Okay, so it's a totally happening life. We're going to do a stage reading of it. I think we got to ask our friends Brian or Mary maybe kind of have a little underscore music while we do it. I was thinking of some of the wonderful dramatic scenes.
Speaking of underscore music, we have to get in the mood, Larry.
Yeah, we are in the mood. Yes, we are in the mood.
Anyway,
Anyway,
but
look a lot like Christmas. Now we are going to. Pete's going to play Brandon. We've asked Pete to play Brandon. I'm going to
Totally
do the narration. I'll probably play some other adult parts like Jim and Gil Myers. But we are looking for a Brendan. We're looking for a Kelly. We're looking for an Andrea, a Cindy, a Dylan, a Steve, a David. Though Pete wants to play David too. A Donna, a Nat, Mrs. Teasley, Gil Myers, Nikki, and the kid.
Now, the thing is, okay, so a couple of things about everything you just said. The Steve part, I think, is big in this episode. I think the Mrs. Teasley part is very big in this episode.
I think so, too.
Because I remember that Mrs. Teasley has a big speech that she makes, and so we need someone who's got a little bit of oomph behind that. So what we want to do...
Just go for it. I mean, we're not going to have auditions for this. We want
no.
This is going to be a fun Christmas thing. And it's also going to be a drinking game within it, and
exactly.
other things are going to pop.
It's a party.
So we'll see how much it's a party. So
yes,
we'll see how much. So here's what it is. So we're putting it out there. All the people who know our podcast, like our podcast, and want to be part of it, we'll be able to. You'll play Brandon, but you'll play him on this page. If we get a big response, and if we don't, we'll just break it up in a way.
Pete,
we'll break it up into scenes.
Where should they check in?
We can have multiples.
Yes. So if you want to, and Melanie will probably come back from this. She's right now at the winter meetings.
We want Melanie to play Andrea.
Yeah.
Melanie's Andrea. I'm Brandon, so that's perfect. Good mix there. All right. So if you want to join us, all you have to do is just get in touch with me. Just let me know however you want to do this. And I, of course, will reach out to a bunch of people that I know have done this for us in the past and would love to come on. But we really want everybody to participate. It's open to everybody who listens to our podcast, Patreon or no Patreon, whatever you have. And we're really excited. So there's how many parts, Larry? Is there about 10 parts that we need to cast here? Or?
I just had it there.
Well, I had an idea too.
It's there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
We have an ensemble show.
We've already cast, so there's probably like 12 or 13 open parts.
Okay, so 12 or 13 open parts.
I got an idea too. I got an idea. If you want to be in the It's a Totally Happening Life choir and sing the songs that the traditional Christmas songs that were used in the episode.
Oh, I'm hoping Mary.
Let us know because we'll give you the episode. Pete will talk to the very next. You'll get the episode with the original music, and you guys
will be able to show it on YouTube, or are we going to get into copyright problems?
The singing we won't be able to.
No, singing a cappella, I think you're fine. Yeah.
We'll be fine for that. So that would be if they want to. If people want to get together on that,
it's a party. It's December 21st.
So you get to win the Christmas music, and I'll be part of that.
Yeah,
December 21st. Super Deluxe Christmas Party 3. Where else do you want to be? And now, what's great is now you get to be a part of the Deluxe party. I mean, in the past, we did something really fun with Jamie. We've had a couple of really good years here with the Super Deluxe Christmas Party, but now the fans are actually going to get a chance, much like on Thanksgiving, they're going to get a chance to participate with us, and it will be a blast. So if you want to be whoever you want to be, I mean, listen.
That script, and Pete, you should show a couple of clips from that script also, just to show how we're doing and the real people are doing.
Now, what I'm going to do, by the way, I haven't told you guys this now, but next week I'm going to do the best of the Super Deluxe Christmas parties, and I'm going to cut together you know what I mean, and maybe we'll record another intro for it, you know what I mean, next week, and it's the best of the things that we have done, and then we'll be hyping up the December 21st Super Deluxe Christmas party. So
sounds good. Thanks.
So listen, guys, get in on this now because this is going to be a lot of fun, and we really want to enjoy this with you. We appreciate all of the support you've given this podcast in the last few years, and I think it will be a fun time for everybody.
Exactly.
All right, Chuck, Larry, what's going on with you? You guys are together? Are you guys going to do something fun now together, or?
I don't know. Chuck just dropped by because I knew he didn't have access to do this intro, and he's here anyway. He's a neighbor.
The computer man came. First, he had to do stuff at our house here in the marina, and then we did caravan over to Venice, where he actually looked at the computer and said, "Nope, this one's done." So we had another one to pull out. So he's putting that computer and everything about it back together.
Oh my God!
This engagement, we had to do it, and it gives me a chance to be with Larry.
It's amazing. All right, well, this is great, guys. I'm going to now play the interview from season 8, which is why you guys tuned in tonight. And but with Zach, he was a little kid in the series. He played what's her name? Carly. No, the actress Hillary Swank's son in the series. And then they both were removed at the same time. So that's the kid was having so much fun on set. And then
did he have a career after that, or did that just crush him?
No, he did, but but as most kid actors, if it does slowly start to change for them, and I don't want to spoil the interview, so
go ahead,
have fun. Okay,
all right, guys, thank you so much. It's good seeing you, and we'll be back with another intro next week, and then don't forget the Super Deluxe Christmas party on the 21st. Okay. Hello. This is exciting.
Yeah, I'm glad we can make it happen.
Yeah.
So I'm just closing other windows as I'm like looking at grading stuff.
You look a little different.
Slightly, yeah.
You've grown up, but still actually quite the same. You know what I mean? Which is normal when you see someone that's older now. Myles Jeffrey was Zach on Beverly Hills 90210 a very long time ago. And you're doing way different stuff now than acting, right?
Yeah, I'm working on a PhD in English literature now, so little different.
Yeah, and but I
Still
know
looking at words all day, whether
you're
it's a
doing brew
script or
stuff, right? You're doing some beer stuff too.
yeah, that's like kind of more of a hobby than a career track, but definitely something that that I'm into for sure.
Sometimes those things become the career track, though, right? Out of
Yeah, I
nowhere.
mean it's not going to for me.
Um,
It's one of those things that's like if I because I thought about it for a little bit. I was like if I ended up like even working at like a brewery or something like that, like I would just it would stop being fun.
sure. And
No.
I'm curious. Like, so let's go back to talking about your acting, right?
Yeah.
You were a child actor, and what was that like for your life like when? And was that something that you wanted to do, or was that something your parents did, or what was that?
Yeah. So I mean, going back to the back to the beginning is always kind of a strange thing because I started when I was about 4 or 5, I think, is like when I went on like my first auditions. And my oldest brother, who's 5 years older than I am, he had done like a commercial or two when he was like a toddler. And my middle brother, who's like a year and a half older than I am, um, we were close in age and we could read pretty early on. And so my mom saw that like we could read, we had, a personality. We lived at that time like 2 hours from LA, so it wasn't like impossible. And she just asked us like, "Hey, do you want to be on TV?" And like when you're 5, you go, "Yeah, like of course." And so we met with my oldest brother's like previous agent that my mom was still in contact with. She, met my brother and I. And she's like, "Yeah, like cute kids. As long as they take like a commercial acting class, like I'll start sending them out on auditions." And we did, and she did, and it was just like a kind of slow snowball, right? Like first you're like waiting for the first job, right? Which in
Mhm.
this case for me was like a Domino's commercial that my brother got hired in. And because I was like tagging along, because childcare and all of that,
Right.
um, I ended up getting hired for the commercial too because it was like a peewee hockey team and like I could ice skate and like one of the kids they were going to hire like said he could but he couldn't. So I was like there like just showing off or whatever around like the
Right.
director whoever's casting it and they're like who's that kid and he's like oh it's my brother and they're like all right well is he an actor like yeah okay well like he can be in the commercial too so we have like a full like full team and then from there it was just commercials more commercials um for me the kind of the big break was doing the movie Face Off
Yeah,
with
with
John
Travolta.
Travolta.
Yeah, and Nicolas
uh
Cage, right?
yeah, it's funny. Yes, yeah, on paper, yes, it's John Travolta, Nicolas Cage. Nicolas Cage like kills me in the movie in the opening sequence. But he was actually not there on set. He was still filming Con Air.
Okay.
So yeah, it was sort of weird that like I didn't meet him
I'm sure
while
people in
we were
your
filming
life,
it.
because they're so fascinated with Nicolas Cage now, are like, wait, didn't you do that movie with Nicolas Cage? Sort of,
Yeah,
right?
actually, I've done 2 movies with him. Neither time did I meet him. Although I did, I did like years later, 10 years later, I did an animated film called The Ant Bully that he was in, and like with animated stuff, like you just like ships in the night. Like if
Right,
you
sure.
happen to be at the booth at the same time, like someone leaving or going, whatever. I did get to meet him though, because I came back to the set of Face Off for like one day when they were filming kind of near my house. And I was like, I met him as he was like heading back to his trailer. And I was like, hey, like, which was cool.
Yeah. So you did get to meet him. How was John Travolta?
He was so like warm and like kind. And yeah, I mean, it was just like he was he told me like so his son Jet, who has unfortunately like since passed away, was like pretty similar in age to me. And like I remember like one of the first things he says like, oh, you remind me so much of my son. And then like immediately like I just like felt this like warmth from this guy. And we only had 2 days of shooting, one of which was like shooting because I got shot. But
Right.
yeah, like I mean I remember it like still like pretty vividly and like fondly. And like I wanted to like do as much of my own stunts as I could because I'd get shot and I'd like fall off this like carousel. And John Woo, like the director, was like so like he like thought I was like a porcelain doll. Like he was like, like, oh no, like we can't get you hurt. Like you have to like be careful, be careful, be careful. Meanwhile, like
There must have been a lot of be careful, right? Yeah.
right, yeah. And that's like meanwhile, it's like John Woo films, like everyone's like, things are exploding, people are
Sure.
like fighting, it's crazy. But yeah, he was just like, very like we need to protect. I'm like 6 years old or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, and so having like a movie on your resume obviously like helps when you're still auditioning for TV and other movies. And so
when you're
I've
an
done
actor at
like,
that age, like, are you, because so much of what you learn about acting later on is, you have how do you develop the characters, how do you find the characters, and I'm sure when we get to talking about 90210, that's something that you would have done probably because it was a regular series. But I mean, how are you finding that at such a young age? Like, what are you doing? Are you just doing what feels natural, or what are you taking acting classes?
yeah, so sorry,
Yeah.
let me rearrange my chair. I wasn't really in regular acting classes, but I did go to like acting coaches, where I would learn my lines and then we would run them and sort of figure out at that age. It's not real. I don't remember it being like, oh, like what's your character's like intention and motivation and like
Sure.
what's your want, and like there's no like Meisner technique where you're you're
Right.
like shouting one word at one another or anything like that. But to me, like back then, my approach to acting was like say the lines in a way that sounds natural, right? And like I never really thought it had to be more than that. Later on, like an acting teacher asked me, like, what is your approach? I was like, oh, it's like, Laurence Olivier, like you just say the words. They're like, oh, that's not a technique at all. And I was like, oh yeah,
And that
shit, maybe
might
that's
not be
why I hadn't
Laurence
worked.
Olivier's, right? Yeah.
Yeah, like it worked for him, right?
Right, totally.
Famous
Yeah.
Shakespearean actor. Yeah, so for me, at that age, it mostly was just memorizing, speaking, as naturally as possible, maintaining, like kind of like basic stuff, like maintaining like eye contact as a way to like, it wasn't like I wasn't thinking about it like, oh, I need to slip into this character, I need to do this. Like for me, it was just like, my job is to say these lines as convincingly as possible. Like that's kind of as simply as I thought about it. And, it worked
It did.
pretty
Yeah, for sure.
decently well. For my career as like a 6 to 10 year old, 11-year-old, whatever.
Do you remember how you got 90210?
Yeah,
It must have been
so
right after that, right? That's around that time.
yeah, so 97 is like when I got cast. So yeah, so 97, 98. So I guess I would have been like 6 turning 7. And I went to like, standard big audition, right? Tons of kids in the waiting room. In those days, the sides are faxed to you. You have to like answer a pager, go to a payphone and call your agent back and be like, yes, I can go. And so yeah, I went to the first audition. It went well, got a call back, went well. And then I think my third callback was like I went to network, and it was like such a different experience because you're no longer like in like the standard like casting offices, you're like in a boardroom. And I remember it
Right.
being like literally like a boardroom, like big like wood paneled walls and like a long table with like 9 people on the other side, and like me like
You have to
kind of
read the dialogue as Zach there.
Mhm.
That's pretty intense.
Yeah. And so like Aaron Spelling was like one of the people at the table. At that point, I think I read directly with Hillary Swank. It could have been a reader and she could have just been in the room, but I'm like 90% sure that like I actually read with her. And I remember like the difference maker, right, for me was that like in the scene I had to hide a banana that like I wasn't gonna eat or something like underneath a napkin. And like I actually like mimed it, like actually was like, did the action of doing that. And I guess none of the other potential Zachs did.
Right.
And Hillary apparently was like, yeah, like that's the kid, like he's who I would pick. Obviously it wasn't her call, but
Well, I'm
I
sure they
think
listened to
I'm sure exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm sure that carried a lot of weight. So
Right, for sure. What was she like? Do you remember meeting Hillary Swank? I mean, she's such a huge, well, I think she was becoming a huge actor right around this time.
yeah, I mean, like she had done like the next Karate Kid, and she was in like Buffy the movie, not the show, before
Sure.
then. Um, and so like I hadn't seen either of those two things because like I guess I was a little kid. So I wasn't like I didn't know who she was. She was just like someone I'm acting with. Um, See, I don't really remember like meeting her because like it would have been like in the audition process. But yeah, like I mean, pretty quickly, like we developed like a I think like a pretty strong rapport. You know, most of our scenes were together. And yeah, I mean, like, I guess we can like get into like the show experience.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, like,
you come to
you know,
set, you're going to be on. Do you know what 90210 is at that age? Like, are you aware this is a huge show? Because it's a big show, you know?
yeah.
Yeah.
So I didn't watch it, right? Again, like I'm
Of course.
watching like, you know, Nickelodeon. But I was aware that like it was a big network show, right? Like I don't think I knew quite like, you know, because I'm coming in at season 8. It's an established show. I don't think I knew like the history. Like I didn't know like that Shannon Doherty had left or
Right.
like, like I didn't know any of
Yeah,
that, right?
yeah, sure.
I just knew that like, hey, like this is a big show, right? And
Right.
so for me, I was like, all right, like I need to do like the best job I can because like this is like how you know,
Get more work.
make it in Hollywood, right? Like,
Yeah.
and if I can keep this job, like great, like nothing like, you know, being like steadily on a show. So I had like an impression that that was the case. I you know, I wasn't like a fan of the show going in.
Sure. Was your family aware of it? Like, you know, was there?
Yeah, like, I don't think they were like regular watchers, but like my mom probably more so than my dad, like knew it and like probably watched it like earlier on, you know. But then, you know, raising 3 kids, like
Sure.
television time, like watching time kind of out the window,
But they're
especially
like
when,
pop culture.
yeah, no,
icons.
it's like, yeah, it's
Yeah, you know what I mean?
absolutely like
Yeah.
in the ether. Like
Sure.
everyone
Yeah.
knew, you know, Melrose Place 90210 was like, yes, like I
Yeah.
so yeah, and like it was also cool because like I had like my teachers were like excited about it. So I was in 3rd grade at the time, and like, you know, my 3rd grade teacher and like my like and like her friend who was like a 2nd grade teacher got like were like so excited because they're like, oh my gosh, you had like this show. And
they're giving you
so,
all
like,
the
it's kind
back. They're all giving you all the backstory. Right? Shannon left.
yeah. So it's sort of interesting that like, you know, like, oh, like the adults in my life were like knew more kind of about it than I did. But yeah, like I think, you know, from the beginning, like we're filming like a soccer scene outside, and like that's when I met Ian, and immediately he's like a big kid to me, and I'm like, okay, like he's like a fun uncle, right? Like he's just like has that like energy and that like, you know, like he's so fun, and I picked up on that like immediately. And so we, you know, like we hit it off right away, which is great because like we had a lot of scenes together, and like and that was like what our rapport was supposed to be, right? That like, you know, he and like, you know, Steve and Carly have this thing going on, but like he and Zach are like, oh wow, like this is like a kid who's like bringing out the kid in me and like reminding me like, you know, that's not all this or that. And that,
like it's the first time we see Steve in sort of like a fatherly role, which in that season 8, like college is over, we're going to start seeing these characters as adults now, so it's like the perfect sort of thing for Steve to be involved in, to be, you know, spending time with this kid.
Right. And like, you know, one of my favorite scenes was like where like he's like babysitting me, right? And like I have to like lie about like the foods that I ate because like yeah. And so like, you know, that, I mean, that scene was like on my like reel for like ever, because it was like, it's such a good, you know, like good moment. So yeah, like, you know, right away, like we hit it off. And then, you know, kind of as I started, obviously like that was working like outside. And then once we went to like the studio, you know, filming, being like in a studio space with like dressing rooms and like passing people in the hallway, like starts to feel like kind of like another like a real job where like, like, oh, hey, you know, like, hey, Jenny, hey, Brian, like that kind of thing. My
is it like that? Is it like, does it become?
Yeah, it is like that. My dressing room was like across from Tori's. And I would say out of everyone, like Tori and I became the closest of like all the people that I like worked with on the show, like at the time.
That's even that's interesting too, because you didn't really have that much with her, right?
Like basically like no screen time together, right? But it's like those things, like yeah, like we're, you know, but like we're across from each other, right? And like when she's like in her, you know, dressing room, like I'm in mine, like I had schoolwork to do, but like when I wasn't doing schoolwork, I was like playing Nintendo, like in her room. There's a lot of video games.
There's a scene where Zach ruins all of her artwork, and it becomes the Child's Play line. There's a scene.
Oh yeah.
Right. He draws all over her artwork out of the lines and all this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's rushing back to me too. And I'm like, oh, yeah, like, yeah, we did do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like, offset time was like, for me, it was like hanging out with Tori a lot, and then just like a lot of video games abounded in the studio. So like Tori had like an NES, like an original
Oh,
Nintendo.
that's dope.
And so like I would play that. We'd like Super Mario Brothers 3 like all the time. Um, Brian had a PlayStation, and this was like, early years of PlayStation, so it's like the coolest thing. And then Jason, like race car driver, had like a full-on arcade
Of course.
side by side Daytona USA like arcade game, right? And then like you didn't have to pay for it, right? Like there was no tokens, like
Right.
you just could play. And so like Brian and I played that actually a lot. Like we would race each
You and
other.
Brian went into Jason's.
Yeah,
I love it. Yeah.
yes, and like I was thinking about this, like it couldn't have been in his dressing room because like it was big, so I think he just like like there was just like a room for like
Everything
Jason's
just like totally makes sense. Like everything you just said, like Tori would have this classic NES sort of system, not even know what to do with it. And Brian would have the newest gaming system.
yeah,
But of course Jason would have like a
right, the
full-on race car thing in his area.
and so like we would play that, and I remember like I only like raced against Jason like once or twice. It was like it wasn't fun because he would just like smoke me every time because like I'm playing like kids like automatic mode, and he's like shifting because like he knows how to do it. So yeah, there was a lot of that, and it was just like that's kind of what I remember most from the like my time from the set was like those like in between times where like every like, and probably because it was I was a kid, that like I was bringing out like the kid, I guess, like in everyone else, and like I had a lot
Totally.
of fun doing that.
Yeah. I mean, so what about with Hillary Swank herself? Did you have much interaction with her? I mean, or was she, because I mean you did a lot with Hillary Swank.
Yeah, so like we had like obviously like most of my scenes were with her. Like we also got close. I think she was probably the only person that like I wouldn't even call it like hanging out because like I'm a kid, but like that I would like maybe like see like outside of like shooting. Like we would like go to lunch,
Mhm.
like when we weren't filming or whatever. I kept in contact with her the most like after the show too. Like I remember like calling her the day after she won like her Oscar for Boys Don't Cry, and
Right.
like getting to talk to like an Oscar winner like the next day, like that, like she took the phone call kind of a thing, like that was cool. And so like we had a really good relationship. And yeah, like it's weird that like I have a hard time like remembering like what we did like offset, like other than like hang out like lunch or whatever. But like yeah, like all the other stuff like with Brian and Tori and Jason and Ian, like that was like kind of like the stuff that I really like, remember from it. It was like, again, you're a kid, like video games are your life, right? So like that is pretty memorable.
Was there any of the storylines that you remember specifically as being like, I love this work, or I love what we're doing here?
Yeah, I mean, I think like I said, like and these are more like I guess like moments or episodes, but like Steve babysitting me like is like was like a fun, like that was like a really fun thing to shoot. And then there's an episode like later on the season where I get lost at the mall.
I remember that. It's great. Yeah.
Yeah, and that one was directed by Anson Williams, who
Happy Days.
Yeah. Which of course, like everyone keeps telling me, like, "Oh, Anson Williams, Happy Days." I'm like, I haven't seen Happy Days. Like,
were they
like,
saying that on set to you too? Like, this is
like people like like people were like, "Do you know who this is?" And I'm like,
"No, I don't know what Happy Days."
I mean, I could like recognize that, like, oh yeah, like yes, I knew that like Happy Days like was this like influential show, but like I don't think again at the time.
Why would you have
realize...
known what Happy Days is? There's no reason.
I mean, I've always been into like trivia and stuff, and like
sure. Okay.
And more like I get that at that time like more movies than television, so like I knew that like it was this like big show. And like I think I knew like the word like Fonzie was like in my in my register, right?
Right. I mean, we all have that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, so like I remember that being like a really like I was like, this is like, I remember being like, this is good, like this is like like this is a good storyline, like I'm like this is like a chance for me to like like show off like acting chops or whatever it was, you know, like being lost, being scared, like so like that is kind of vivid for me. And then like the Christmas episode, also like I remember like pretty well. Also I remember there was like I'm pretty sure there was like mistletoe somewhere, and I think like Tori like made a point to like find me under it and like kiss me on the cheek, and I remember that being like, oh my gosh, like why is
That's
like
such a
someone
big-
kissing me, like you know.
That's great. Yeah,
Like it was like, you know, more like cooties rather than like whatever or
I
anything
got
else.
you.
But yeah. But I remember being like, you know, like uh that was really fun. And like, you know, just like it's like set decorations, right? Like because like set decorators are going to go crazier than like your average person because like they can, and like they have everything at their disposal. So like, oh, like
Sure.
Christmas, like let's like do Christmas, or like, you know.
And it's
I
probably
remember
not
like
even in like December. It's probably like October or something,
right,
right?
exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And we were, you know, constantly shooting like usually like not even back to back, but like overlapping sometimes, right? Where we're, like,
Double ups. Yeah.
yeah. And so
Was that intense as a kid?
I remember just like one time that it was intense. Like most of the time it was like fine, like my stuff was spaced out, but also when you're working on, you know, a show and you're getting like the green pages and the blue pages and like these revisions are coming in from the writer's room like every day. You know, it's like it's fast paced and like, you know, it's not quite like soap opera status where it's like a show a day, but I do remember being like there was a time where we were doubling up and there was like, you know, and we just kept getting like revisions for the scene. It was like, you know, yellow page, goldenrod page, like salmon page, and like in all these different colors. And like I was like kind of being like, oh, this is like a lot, because like we're supposed to be filming the scene like this afternoon and like keeps changing. And like, you know, like I was filming a different scene from a different episode in the morning, and like it, I remember like just like one time that it was a lot. And then the
Is
other
it
kind
like,
of
is it tough to like know the continuity of what I'm even shooting now?
I actually was always super good with continuity.
That's cool.
Like to the point where like directors like throughout my life would like be like, you have like a really good eye, which I always thought was, you know, cool. Cause like I would say something like, oh, like you were holding that cup in your other hand. Like I would like pick up stuff like that. And the script supervisor would be like, yeah, you need to make sure you're holding it in like the right hand, right? So
That's
that kind
awesome.
of stuff I was always really good with. Continuity wise though, was funny is I lost a tooth in the middle of a day of shooting once. And so like I don't remember which episodes, but if you look carefully, there is an episode where I am missing a tooth at the beginning of the episode and has grown back by the end because you know, I lost it in between. And you know, when you're a kid, like you get this thing called a flipper, which is a special retainer to fill in missing like baby teeth basically. And like there's like one dentist like on the Sunset Strip like who does them, right? And like you, if you go, you lose a tooth, you go, you get a flipper. And you know, they would turn them out pretty quick because like they don't have time for like, you know, whatever, like the show must go on, right? And so I remember like going to get it like the next day, but they're like, we can't reshoot this, like you are going to have. And because we were doubling up, I think like the tooth is like missing, it's back, and then it's gone like in the next episode, and then it's like gone for good, right? But yeah, like that's the kind of thing that's like when you're shooting like so quickly that like there's no time to like fix that kind of stuff.
Totally. That's hilarious. How about how did you find out like the characters were being written off?
Oh,
and
sent
were
off to
you
a farm
aware
in
of the
Montana
like
to die?
the drama of the Hillary Swank drama and all that stuff? Were you aware of all that as a kid? Like things are tense here, or?
So I don't really remember any tension with her, or even like thinking that like things weren't going great or whatever.
Right.
I do remember being like disappointed that like, oh, like, you know, I thought I was like on my way to becoming like a series regular, right? And that like,
and that was
16
totally
episodes,
plausible. I mean, like the character Carly was great with Steve. You know what I mean? Like you were in that world, so it's not out of the realm of possibility. That's where we're going with this.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't really remember like how it happened. Or like I don't remember like the drama behind it or whatever. I just kind of like have a vague recollection of like, hey, like you're being written out of the show, and like we're gonna have a going away party for you guys. And like we did. And like I remember that being fun. Like it wasn't like it, you know, like there literally was like a party with like cake, and like it was not like no one
I think there
stormed
was on the
off, like,
show, and also now you're saying there was one off the show as well,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And
yeah.
and like, you know, there's like all kinds of like, for me at least, like going away like gifts, like the like fringed like jacket that I was wearing, like I got to keep, and like the hat, like cowboy hat that I was wearing, I got to keep. The cast, I want to say, bought me a PlayStation.
That's very
Because
cool.
they knew that like, you know, I was playing so much, which was like very cool, like a very nice gesture, like especially to a, you know, 7-year-old who like
Mhm.
loves that. And so like, you know, that was great. I still have it. Like I still have that PlayStation, which is fun. Yeah, and so like, you know, I remember it being um like kind of bittersweet for me at least. And you know, it turned out to be, I don't call it like a blessing in disguise or anything, but like the next year, right, the next like TV season, I did get a series regular role on a show called Early Edition with Kyle Chandler. And Christy Swanson, who like, you know, was Buffy in like the movie
Right.
that Hillary was in with Luke
Yeah.
Perry. And so like there was kind of this weird like, you know, reality collapsing in on itself. And like that ended up being like a great, you know, like a great thing for me, like career wise. But yeah, it was like at the time, like that was also filming in Chicago versus like filming in Van Nuys, where, you know, I was like close to home as opposed to like had to be
Sure.
away for, you know, like off and on for 9 months a year. So yeah.
You were in school when this was on,
Mm-hmm.
and were you constantly getting recognized from being a 90210?
I mean, not really by my peers. Although some kids, like I do remember like some kids watched it for
Of
sure.
course. Yeah.
And then like some kids would like, you know, make fun of me, like they'd like say my lines back to me, and I'm like, I don't know, like it was like a weird jealousy thing, or if
It's
it's
such a
just
weird
like
thing that kids would do.
teasing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, like it was, you know, like it was more so like when I did like Disney Channel movies that like the recognition like really went like
Right.
up, because like it was like the people I saw the most were like the age group that was being targeted. So but you know, like it's like over time, like I went to UCLA for my undergrad, and like one of my professors, like I went into her office hours to talk about, you know, like 17th century literature or something, and she's like looking at me and she's like, you, where do I know? And I was like, yeah, like I was an actor. And she's like, you were on 90210. Oh my God, I love 90210. And like, you know, and
Yeah.
that was like, she ended up like writing me a letter of recommendation for graduate school like years later. And the only reason I was like approached her is I was like, I knew she'll remember me. I know she'll remember me because like I knew she was a fan of 90210. Like she's not gonna forget her student who was like on her favorite show that like, you know.
Right. That's
So
amazing though, man.
yeah.
That's really cool. I mean, does that still, I mean, you did act a bunch after 90210 too, out like you were
Yeah.
acting for a while.
Yeah, I would say like 90210 was kind of like the beginning of like, you know, my like peak, you know, output kind of, you know, like
Sure.
while I was on it, I was also doing commercials. I did you know, and then after that, like it was like a pretty steady stream of like, you know, I did like guest star spots on like, you know, like ER and Touched by an Angel and Family Law, and
You even
you
were
know,
in
like,
the Santa Claus.
yeah, I was just doing like voiceover like stuff. It was, like it's on my IMDb, but like I don't know, like I didn't put it there, like I don't know how it got there.
Oh really?
But yeah, so Santa Claus 2, I was like doing like background like voice, because I always did like voice work too. Like this entire time, like I got into voice work because like when I was a kid, I had like a really raspy kind of unique voice. So
it says you're an elf. You're not an elf.
I was like the voice of elves. Yeah, like I don't know. You
Oh,
know.
so you didn't get to see all like the magical
No,
Christmas? Damn
no.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah.
Yeah. But you know, like, yeah, I started, you know, I guess like was the beginning of like me being like kind of prolific, right? Like as an actor and as like a child actor. So yeah, you know, it was like obviously like a great experience for like, again, not only as like a resume thing, but also as like a professionalization thing of like learning what it's like to be on a set like day in, day out. Because before that, it's like Face Off, I shot for 2 days, and like a commercial I shoot for 1 day, or like, a little, like I did like an episode of like Lois and Clark, Superman, and that was like a 3-day shoot with like my character. But like with 90210, it was like my first regular job where it was like, all right, like you're getting here like at this time every day, like you do your like 3 hours of like schooling, and then it's time to go to work. And did that steadily for like months and months. So yeah.
What made you not want to act anymore? Was there a point where you were like, I don't want to do this anymore? Do you miss acting too?
Yeah, so it was like a compound of different things. The main one was that like once I got to high school, I started getting like serious about like I want to go to, at that point, Harvard. I was like, I'm gonna go to Harvard. Like that's the goal. And it was weird, like my career trajectory from the time I was in like 6th grade was always I wanted to keep acting as a way to like be a stepping stone into directing. And like I wanted to be a director. And like Anson did, right? Like
Totally. It's not
like Ron Howard did, like
yeah, exactly.
Mark Harmon did, like all of these, especially TV, right? Because it's like you work with the same people all the time. You're like, hey, like let me try my hand at like one of these episodes, and eventually they like say yes. So that was kind of always my goal, is that I wanted to do that. And for whatever reason, I was like, I'm gonna go to school, like I'm gonna get a good degree, and then like I'm gonna come back and like I'm gonna keep acting, and then I'm gonna like be a director. But like for me, like it was really important, and I was always like a pretty good student. I just like got my mind set up that like I was going to go to like the best school I could go to, and like for me it was Harvard. And so like as I started taking like chemistry, like advanced like Spanish, pre-calculus, right? Like you kind of stop finding like studio teachers who can like teach you the material if you're like on set all the time. And I was missing a lot of, I would be missing a lot of school if I was gone. And so I just sort of like scaled back rather than like stopped. And I did it like, I would only audition for things that seemed like, really, really worthwhile, like a big movie or something like that. Not like the regular, like, okay, like, hey, co-starring role, like this, one episode in TV show, a couple lines, like good pay for a day's work. But like, I just didn't have the time to like constantly driving up from, at that point, like living in Orange County, like driving up to LA, go on auditions just to come back and like do a bunch of homework. So I just kind of slowly, kind of phased it out. And then by the time I was like, a junior in high school, I was like taking like 4 AP classes and, doing like Model United Nations, like everything I could to be like the best like college like candidate possible.
Sure.
And I ended up at UCLA, which I was like, okay, well now I'm actually like living in LA. So, but again, I was like, I'm taking classes, like I was still like, I actually got to UCLA, I was 16, I turned 17 right away. But like my first year, I was like, if I do get a job, like I will still need a studio teacher, like even though I'm in college, because I'm under 18.
Sure.
So I scaled back again, and I just started doing like voiceover only when I was in college.
That's cool. Yeah.
And I worked like a little bit. And also like it was helpful that like my voiceover agency was like pretty close to Westwood. And then like I applied to film school. I didn't get in. And then I had like crisis of faith. And I was like, well, maybe like I'm not going to be a director. And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. But I knew I wanted to work in the industry. So I started like the summer before my last year at UCLA, I got like, I was like a friend of a friend. I got hired as like the first AD, even though I like never AD'd anything, for a short film starring Ben Savage. And like I definitely watched like Boy Meets World growing up. So I was like, yes, I can't.
That's your speed.
Yeah, like I can't say no to this. And so I did. And then like, one of the actors in that who, was also kind of like a young writer director who wanted to like make more stuff. Like I made a couple short films with him as like a producer. And, I was like, oh, like maybe like this production side like is what I want to do. And then so after college, I ended up working at MTV for the show True Life. And I was an associate producer for that for like 4 years. And I was like, well, like I'm still in the industry, like this is going to be like how I move towards,
Directing or something.
directing. But I wasn't like writing scripts. I wasn't like, trying to make short films or anything. Like, so I wasn't really putting in the work. And at that point I had started auditioning again. Because again, I was like working in LA, like in Century City, like right around the corner from like the Fox building, Nakatomi Plaza from Die Hard, like the Fox building. Yeah. So I was still like auditioning, and like I started acting classes. I realized that like my acting style as a child was like, not going to hack it anymore. Right. Because there was like nothing behind it anymore. And so like, it was the irony for, like, to me was that like, I got, I started working also on like plays. Like I didn't actually do theater, but like I would do monologues. I would like do scenes from plays. So the irony to me was I got much better at acting, and yet I like never ended up like working again. Cause I was like, like, it was, I'm glad that I did. Like, it's a worthwhile experience, and like I would never say never. It's kind of, probably never, but so yeah, so like again, like I was I was auditioning a lot and like not really getting where I wanted to go. And I was seeing my friends who were like in my acting classes, and like they would like wake up and be like, what am I going to do today to become a better actor? And I was like, I don't have that same drive. Like, I like it. This is fun for me. Like, it's something that I love to do, but I don't love it that much. And like, I'm not gonna, like, and they're like dropping everything to like go on auditions. I was like, I don't know if I want to do that. So, long story short, like I stopped working at MTV. That kind of just like fizzled out. Like, we just had fewer and fewer episodes like to work on. I started working in heavy construction. My dad, my uncle, my grandfather, back like multiple generations, are all crane operators. And it was like, I was like, well, like I need steady money. And I got into like the union. I learned how to run cranes. Like, I made very good money, like probably the best money I'd made since I was like working regularly on TV. Which, like, the nice thing was, like, working as a kid, like I didn't have like any student loan debt. Like I was able to pay for my tuition, which was great. But then afterwards, it's like, well, now what? So I was doing that, and then I started working nights, and like there's like, and I could maybe audition, but then when I wasn't working nights, it's like you can't like ask a foreman like, hey, like can I take off early? Like there's a commercial for Campbell's soup that I just like I think I got it. So just sort of like fizzled, kind of fizzled out. And I met my now wife around that time, like while I was working for MTV. And we're like starting to like figure out like what do we want for the future, and like what do we want our future to look like. And then like one day, really out of the blue, it felt like out of the blue, I like was like working. It was like 4 a.m. because you go in early, and I'm like backing up a crane. And I was like, I want to be a literature professor. And it was just sort of like a moment of inspiration. And yeah, like I texted, like the only person who I knew was awake was my best friend who was living in Singapore. And she's like, remember that feeling, because like it's not gonna, you're not always gonna have it, but like if that's really what you want, like hold on to that. And this is like 5 years ago now, and I still like love it. And that is what I want to do. And I do want to teach like literature and film. Like film is like deeply like steeped in like who I am, how I think about like media, how I think about the world, how I think about like culture. So I'm never turning my back on like film and television. But from a production side, like I don't really foresee myself like going back to it.
Unless maybe something really cool came your way and it was an opportunity that you can dive into. Something like that.
Exactly. And like, the cool thing is like those friends of mine who like were, like living and breathing acting, like a lot of them have become like very successful now. And like, I am super happy for them. And like, if they ever were like, hey, like I want to do my own thing. And like, I want, people still like a lot of friends like send me scripts that they write all the time because like, I've been reading scripts my whole life, and I have like a pretty keen eye, and they know that like I'm, even before I studied literature, like I would have friends be like, hey, like can you read my script? And so like like I've got friends who are working actors, like steadily working actors, who are like, I want to do more than just acting. And so they do like send me scripts, and I read them, I get feedback. I'm actually like might teach a screenwriting class, which is
that's really cool.
Crazy. I'm teaching creative writing right now. But yeah, so like never say never, but like the my other friend who I was working for at MTV, like he's now directed like a couple features, and like we had like talked about it. He's like, well, like, do you want to roll in it? And I was like, well, I don't like, do I want to like, I don't know, like, do I? And so I had like, he like put me in a scene because it was like fun, but like it wasn't something that I'm like, all right, doing it for like money or credit or whatever.
Yeah.
So, like there's things like that where like I'm still adjacent enough to the film industry that like I would never rule out like me appearing on screen like ever. But for the most part, like my interests lie in teaching, I think, for the most, like
for now. Right.
For now. Yeah.
until something pops up, which, hey man, you never know. It's always a possible, right, for that to happen. I mean, we've seen that story before where somebody took a totally left turn and then came back around to it. So it's, not another realm there.
Yeah, exactly. And who knows, I might end up like being like, oh, like I've read all these scripts, like, like maybe I'll write one, and then hey, like it's pretty good, like maybe I'll shop it around, and like, oh, maybe it's getting made, or what, like you never know, right?
Exactly. Well, this is great, man, catching up with you. 90210, mostly good experience for you?
Really good experience. I really like can't, it's like not as fun like gossip wise, but like I can't like think of any like anything
I'm
bad
good with that.
Yeah, no, I can't really think of like anything bad that happened, or like any negative experiences like of the set. Like, and again, I'm looking at it from like a child's perspective, but there were other sets that are on where I was like, this is not working, right? Like this is tense. This is not great. Or like this isn't professional. Like this is not good. And I never felt like that with 90210, and that's like, that's great. And I think afterwards I ran into Tiffany once. I don't remember how many years like it was after, but like, and it was like kind of picking up where we like left off. And I like talked to Ian off and on after that. And actually, it was funny, I didn't realize this till after, but like 4 years ago, like 3 or 4 years ago, I went to this like, only way to put it is like a music experience that Tori was at. And like I thought I recognized her, but like I hadn't like kept up with her, and she had blonde hair, and like I remember her always having like red hair because like that was like what she had that season. And I was like, was that? And she was very pregnant at the time too, and I was like, no, like that's not her. And it was like a room of like 300 people who were like, it was basically kind of like a podcast thing where this like music was being like dissected like track by track, and her husband was really into it. Yeah. And I love, like I live for that, like it's so cool. And her husband was really into it, so I guess like he brought her to a show. And I was like, is that? I was like, no, like I don't think it is. Like that would be like, how weird would that be? Like if she was at this thing that like is pretty niche, that like 250 people are going to like Atwater Village like to like check out. And then like literally the next day on the radio, like the guy who did it is like on KLOS, like, or he was in the morning on Monday mornings. He's like, yeah, like Tori Spelling's at my show last night. I was like, oh damn it, like I should have said hi. Like it was her. And I was like really kicking myself. But yeah, because like I feel like like she would have been like so warm and welcoming, like had I been like hey, like remember
I was on 90210. Yeah. She's
Um,
really wonderful with people, especially like the guest star cast and all that stuff, from what I understand. So
yeah, she was like, just, I mean, like really everyone is just like so like warm and welcoming. It was just like, she was like, I think the person that like I gravitated to the most for whatever reason, who was like, the kindest to me and like the most fun.
Were you connected with like Lindsay Price or Vincent Young and all that season? Because like they were also newbies. They were older, obviously.
Yeah, not really. And again, like, it's not like we like had a lot of screen time together either, but yeah, like I have like a sign. I'll send you some photos, because like I've dug through and like found some fun stuff. So I found like, like signed like headshots from like different people. And so like, like I have like more personalized notes from like Ian and Tori, and like, and then like Vincent, like it was just like, hey, like good working with you. Like it was like kind of
right.
And so like I remember like nothing bad. I just like, we just our paths didn't really cross.
I don't even think that there was ever a connection with the like you definitely did that to Donna, but I don't think he was involved in it too much.
Yeah, I don't think so. I definitely don't remember. But yeah, it's like, speaking of things that I dug up, I did want to show you something that
okay.
I pulled out of a trunk at my parents' house a couple months ago. but I got this sweet
Oh, no way.
90s denim jacket. And like it says cast and crew on it. And then well, it's gonna be hard for you to see, but like the buttons
that's
are
amazing.
like 90210 buttons. And the crazy thing is like now that like 90s style is like back, like I see, and I'm on a college campus with like a bunch of Gen Zers who are like 18 and 20. Like everyone's walking around with like jackets like this, and I was like, I could like wear this and like fit in with the youth.
That's amazing, man. So you did get some stuff from your time at 90210.
Oh yeah, like they were honestly like they were the best show for swag that I think like I was ever a part of, or like anything. So I have that jacket. In the 90s, there was also like, I don't know if you remember, like Kipling backpacks were like a really big thing with like the like oversized buckle and like the little like gorilla like keychain.
I
So
do
we
know
got
that. Yeah.
I have like a 90210 like Kipling backpack. One of the cast gifts or cast and crew gift I think at Christmas was and anyone who was like in LA in the 90s knows this. We got like the 1998 edition of the Thomas Guide, like the Thomas Guide like map book, with like a embossed like leather black like 90210 season.
I don't
8,
think
like,
kids
cover.
that you're teaching are gonna have any idea what this is.
They don't know anything about like a map, like a
No
paper map
way.
in a
I
book
mean,
form.
it's
No way.
also
Yeah.
like it's also on our phones and embedded in us. We never have to ever worry about getting from one place to the other. But back in the day, that in the 90s, that was a thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And like it was, like my mom was driving. And so like I was like navigator too. Like my mom would drive me, and like sometimes my grandma and like other people, but like mostly like my mom would drive and she'd be like, okay, it's at like, the audition is like the 1800 block of like Satsuma like Avenue in Burbank. And like I'd go to the back and like find like that. And like, okay, it's on page like 593, like column C, like
Right.
row A. And then like, I'm like, okay, it's fine. Okay, so we're taking the, gotta get to the 134. And then like, then you listen to like the traffic report on like the like AM
That's
radio.
right. I
or,
know.
like, on the KNX or like KFWB.
Are you still out here? Are you still in LA?
I'm in Austin now. So yeah,
Okay,
I moved to Austin 2 years ago when I got accepted to the PhD program here at UT. So yeah, but like I know the streets of LA like very well, and like I'm interested in maps too, like
Yeah,
because I
right.
had this like very formative experience of like flipping through the Thomas Guide,
Sure.
trying to like get from one side of Hollywood to the other. Yeah,
That's amazing, man. This is great. Good catching up with you. I might
Yeah.
send you a script that I wrote. Seriously, I have something
Yeah.
I wrote. Yeah, I mean, you said you do that, so
I do
I'm
it all
looking
the
for
time.
people to read. Anyway, it's really great, man. It's good catching up with you, and I'm glad that you're doing so well. And this is awesome, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And yeah, sorry it took so long. My wife and I had a baby in April, and so like
Congrats.
I think like my life has been kind of turned upside down by that. But
Would you let is boy or girl?
Boy, so I have a son.
Would you let him act?
If he wanted to? I think I would. It was funny because like I'm subjective and very biased here, but he's very cute. And like my grandfather like sent me a letter the other day, and it just said like, shall we put Flynn in the movies? Like just like a little like note. And I'm like,
I love that.
Well, we live in Texas, so it's a little bit harder, but like I would be honest with him, like, hey, like it's not like, it's not like a normal like thing, and like it can provide, like it can provide a lot of opportunity, but I also consider myself like very lucky to have escaped with like a pretty normal, like life after child
So like
accident.
none of the tragic kid story stuff.
Yeah, and like I never got to like a level of fame where like that was gonna be influencing, me.
Mhm.
But like it can get there. And like I have friends who are there and like grew up in the world, and like it is crazy that like, like when my friends are like 12 years old auditioning for a show and like a casting director tells them like they're too fat and they're like a 12-year-old girl, like that does like serious damage to
seriously.
you.
Mhm.
And it's like you're not like fat, you're like a healthy normal like 12-year-old, like, and so like there's that aspect of the industry that I'm like, ooh, no, like I wouldn't,
Or just like not even knowing why you didn't get a role and all of that sort of stuff that
yeah, like the constant rejection. I mean, like
was that
even
hard
like
for you?
No, I think I understood early on that like it was a numbers game and that like, you know, I wasn't gonna win them all. And that that made it a lot easier to like rationalize like constant rejection. And it made like every time like you get, you know, a job, like you really savored it because you're like, wow, like I don't know when the next one's coming. And you know, I loved that aspect of it. And like, you know, I think it was, you know, there's unhealthy things about it, like for sure. But I think one of the healthy things is like learning that like failure, right, is okay. And like failure is not failure. It's just like an opportunity to like start again with something new. And you know, as I've like reinvented like my career multiple times, like as an actor, as a, you know, producer, as a construction worker, and now as a scholar, like I'm totally okay with that. That like I think that like the, you know, that's something that is like embedded within me now, is that like, hey, like you're not gonna like not everything's gonna go perfect for you all the time. And that's okay. And you know, I'm lucky that I have that perspective because like I think it does not, it doesn't affect everyone that way, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, thank you so much for this. This was a lot of fun, and maybe I'll catch up with you some other time too.
Yeah, sounds good. And I'll send you some fun stuff that I've dug up from behind
Please
the
do,
scenes.
man. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Very cool.
All right.
Have